Now, in part 3, we talked about how great the pyramids are, how advanced that civilization had to be. And if you've seen the video on, preparing for the Metu lecture, we got into how only an advanced civilization could have built the Great Pyramids, and that they had to have advanced technology and advanced tools to do so. So the whole question is, when you look at the Great Pyramids and you look at the fact that they had to have used advanced knowledge and advanced tools to build these things, the question is, if they built the Great Pyramids, if these were the Egyptians who actually lived here, we don't see any ruins of any, major civilizations. You would think that a civilization as advanced as whoever built the Great Pyramids would have a far more advanced city where they actually live. The problem is we don't find any ruins of a city that would be that would qualify as a city that is, run and occupied by an advanced civilization. You just don't see it. Because you would think that, okay, if you built these Great Pyramids, they stood the test of time. You would think that they would build themselves a city to live in that would also be, even more advanced and also, withstand the test of time and any kind of, cataclysmic events. But we don't find any major ruins of any major cities anywhere in the world. This is why a lot of people believe that, these cities are underground. And in fact, some Australian archaeologists did find an underground city in Kemet in the Nile Delta, believed to be used by the Hittites or the Hyksos. The thing is, we know there's a lot of ancient Kemet that is still being excavated, a lot of stuff that's still being discovered. So we don't know what they're going to find under the sand. But still, you would expect at this point by now to see the ruins of a great city, of an advanced city built by whoever built these pyramids somewhere near the pyramids or anywhere near any of the pyramids you find around the world. We don't find this. And something, as I said, as great and as strong as the pyramids, you would really think that they would build something even stronger for themselves, to live in. So when we do find these underground cities or these underground, little villages, it's still kind of sort of primitive. It makes you question, who were these people exactly who lived underground? It couldn't have been the people who built the pyramids. We really expect to see something far more advanced. It's another reason why people want to point to aliens building the pyramids. Now, it's a lot of evidence for underground cities in ancient Kemet. When you go there, you see that there is a series of tunnels right near the Great Pyramids that when you go close to them, you can look down and see like it's a series of tunnels. You can hear water under there. I'm going to get into this later. But, researchers have said there is, a complex series of tunnels that run underneath ancient Kemet that, stretch for miles. Also, when you look at the temple of Hatshepsut, it's carved into the side of a mountain. And when you start looking at that mountain around the temple, you can see like these entranceways look like, squares or cutouts into the side of the mountain. And a lot of people believe that these lead into passageways that go deeper into the mountain and underground. In fact, when you go to the temple, you can only see certain parts of it. You can't go deep into the temple itself. So we don't really know what's there. Now, when I get into the Grand Canyon part, you're going to also see these same type of cutouts, in the Grand Canyon. And, the thing about the temple and building it to the side of the mountain is so much room in there. We don't know how much they carved into the mountain or how deep it goes. And as I said, a lot of researchers will tell you that there is a lot of underground tunnels underneath Kemet that are yet to be explored, or they just not telling us, what they found down there. Now, also, when you go to Turkey, to Derinkuyu, they have found an underground civilization there that they believe was set up by the Hyksos, and it's attached to Zoroastrianism. They believe the people around there was into that faith, and that it was built around this time when that religion started to come up. A lot of people believe that it's much older, and the tunnels is much older, and they just basically built on what they had already found there. But it's a story in the whole Zoroastrian religion about Ahura Mazda, who is basically the god of the religion, telling them to go and hide or go and to create these underground cities to live in, to hide from a war that was going to be happening in the sky, to hide from the sky war. So, it's a lot of stories that we find in the ancient world that's dealing with, as I talked about, this war or this cataclysmic event that happened on Earth. It's a lot you have to take into consideration when you're doing something as complex as building these tunnels and these underground civilizations. You have to know where exactly to put pillars, where exactly to put load-bearing pillars, and what part of the soil is soft and hard. Where is the water supply going to come from? Where are you going to put ventilation and lighting and everything like that? It's a lot of complex stuff that go into underground caverns and cities, and a lot of people would think that the people back then was primitive, but you had to be very intelligent to do something this advanced, and what you would have to use to dig miles and miles, the workload, they had to have something to do this. And then when you start getting into some of the other underground caverns that we find, some of them are so vast and so big and deep, it makes you wonder if this stuff was already there and they expanded on it. And, how did they build a lot of these underground caverns? Now, we find these underground caverns, these underground civilizations all over the earth. There's many stories I know a lot of you have seen about, people, doing work on their homes and finding entranceways into underground civilizations. There was a story about that in Turkey and Paris as well, about underground civilizations and all these vast passageways leading to underground civilizations. We find this stuff all over the earth, and we also find pyramids all over the planet. Now, both of these things have something in common, that there is either water directly under them or somewhere near them. Now, a lot of you have heard about the whole hollow earth theory, that when you go much deeper into the planet, there's supposed to be, huge cities underground and, people, advanced civilizations living underneath the earth. We want to get into the hollow earth theory a little bit later into this. But the whole question is why? Why underground? What is the whole, purpose of underground? You would think that, it would be better to be on the surface, with the sun out and everything. It just seems more beautiful on the surface. It's something that you really think about. Why underground? Now, the thing is this is what you have to understand. And some of you know this already, some of you do not, because they don't teach it to us. Now, on the surface of the earth, when we living up here, we are being exposed to all kinds of cosmic radiation. That's a fact. Now, most of the radiation is completely harmless. It goes right through us. It doesn't affect us. But there's a lot of it that does affect us. And our body cells is continually, ever since the first day we are born, our body cells is consistently fighting against this radiation, but it also has to fight against microbes and bacteria and viruses and diseases. So our body cells is continually fighting against these things for our entire life. Now, the deeper you go underground, you are not exposed to any of these things because there's a high concentration, a very high level of negative ions. That is the word of the day, negative ions. Pay attention, because this is the main point I want to make in this entire video. What negative ions is. I don't know what you have been told about them, but you have to understand this. Negative ions play a major role in the cycle of nature on this planet, period, point blank. They play a very vital role in our lives. This is something that is not being taught to us. A lot of people remember those bands people used to walk around with, supposed to be, dispersing negative ions, whatever like that. You have to really understand what negative ions is, and we're going to really get into that in this video. But underground, negative ions exist, and what negative ions do is they completely wipe out radiation, microbes, viruses, and everything like that. They cleanse the body so that your body cells can do what they are meant to do. Your body cells, our body cells, are meant to regenerate. Understand, something that regenerates can never die, because it keeps regenerating. This is what negative ions is supposed to do. So underground, it's a high concentration of it, and people, in theory, and not even in theory, really scientifically proven, will actually live longer with a high concentration of negative ions because your cells will just regenerate. I want you to think about something. I want you to think about stem cell research. The reason why stem cell research works is because they can do these experiments with the stem cells, and the cells have let's say, a sterilized environment to work with. Now, when your body cells, as I said, is not fighting anything, they do their job, and that is to regenerate you. So this is why stem cell research work. I also want you to think about cancer patients. When they go get their chemotherapy treatment, what happens is there's a high concentration of radiation, emitted to, the tumor or the cancerous part of their body. And what happens is their body cells, basically come together and fight hard because it has to fight off that radiation. It tries to fight it off. This is why, like, when they finish the whole treatments, they are completely weak and, they're tired. They start losing their hair because the cells, that's basically holding your strands of hair together have to basically go to the energy used to fight off this bombardment of radiation to your body. So you get weak, you start losing your hair, and they have to use a high concentration of radiation, to shrink the tumor. But it takes a toll on your body. And this is why some people don't die from, the cancer. They die from the radiation. And this has been proven. So, our body cells are meant, whoever created us, understand this. Our body cells were meant to basically heal us. And to, the implications is if your body cells is doing its job, you should be living on this planet for thousands of years. But there are other things that's keeping that from happening we're going to get into in this video. Now, also, I want you to think about trees. Think about the fact that there are some trees that live thousands of years. If a tree is in the right location and has the right supply of resources, we're talking about sunlight, a good, channel of water underground that they can tap into, or if it rains a lot in that area, if they can get their roots deep enough, we know trees can live for hundreds and thousands of years. Now, with some researchers in Australia, in Queensland University, in Brisbane, Australia, who did some research on trees and plants that they say, basically was electrifying the atmosphere. Now, listen to this. And this is from Queensland University of Technology. It says, plants have long been known as the lungs of the earth, but a new finding has found they may also play a role in electrifying the atmosphere. Scientists have long suspected an association between trees and electricity, but researchers in Australia think that they have finally discovered the link. The scientists ran experiments in 6 locations around Brisbane. They found the positive and negative ion concentration in the air were twice as high in heavily wooded areas than in open grassy areas such as parks. Now, I want you to understand what this is saying. It is saying that the trees are pulling the negative ions out of the air. They don't really want the positive ions, even though they're going to be there. They want the negative ions because the negative ions is going to sustain them. Now, trees, plants are living things just like we are. So if they're pulling the negative ions out of the air into their atmosphere and using it to sustain themselves and keep themselves, going for years, centuries, millennia in many cases, this is something you need to think about because it's really deep and what's going on. Understand, as I said, this is a natural cycle. This is what's supposed to happen. The negative ions keep them alive. It's that simple. Now, understand the key to this whole thing is water. Water is the key. Now, we're talking about basically the effects of negative ions on the body, and a consistent level of negative ions would sustain the body. We're talking about the fountain of youth here. This is why the fountain of youth, always was a fountain. It had to deal with water because water is the key to this thing. So now you have to have this steady supply, a continuous, infinite supply of negative ions to basically sustain you for, who knows how long. Unless somebody blow your brains out, you would basically, in essence, live forever. And trees are able to do this. Not only can they pull the negative ions, from the ground and the water, but they can pull it out of the moist air. When all these trees are clustered together, it really creates a humid atmosphere that's muggy. And there's moisture in the air when you have that muggy atmosphere, and it can pull the negative ions right out of the air and redisperse it around them, turning their atmosphere into nothing but negative ions. The reason why you have to have it continuous, because once it dissipates, what happens? You're exposed to the radiation. You're exposed to microbes. You're exposed to any kind of viruses and bacteria that may be, anywhere near you. So having that steady supply of negative ions is key to this whole thing. So now, of course, if the atmosphere is full of this cosmic radiation, if this atmosphere is full of microbes and viruses and stuff like that is causing harm to our body, of course, if you understand that there is a way to create a negative ionosphere, or to create negative ions that could surround the area and basically do what the trees are doing, pulling negative ions, out of the water and putting it into the air, then you have to do this. This is the purpose of the pyramids. This is why the pyramids were all over the world. How did you get negative ions? Remember I said water is the key. You get negative ions from the force of energy of falling or splashing water. This causes the splitting of neutral air particles that frees up electrons that then attach themselves onto other air molecules, causing a negative charge. Now, at the base or at the bottom of the pyramid, remember, it's over top of water. What happens is you have the splashing of water onto the bottom of the pyramid, which shakes off negative ions and accumulates energy onto the pyramid. So now the reason why they built the pyramid under these ley lines is because, the multi-level structure of the pyramid basically draws in more ions, and it basically creates more negative ions to disperse into the atmosphere. So this is what the pyramids were doing. They were amplifying their energy from the negative ions and basically creating more negative ions, or a consistent flow of negative ions into the atmosphere. So, Kemet was hot, and it's moisture in the air, so it will be a stronger, negative ionosphere, or negative atmosphere of or an atmosphere of negative ions in Kemet, because it was moist, hot air. But this was everywhere. We could bet that even if it was cold, if they were able to do this, they did it. I don't know how much effect it had on the climate in cold places, but we know they did this, and because they did this, things were able to grow. I want you to go back and look. Remember, the Nile, fertile, is right there. But remember, before, the Sahara Desert was not a desert. It didn't used to be a desert. It was fertile. It was green. And what happens is the negative ions causes trees to grow huge when they have a steady amount. They grow huge. They grow in abundance. So understand that, remember, when you look at the depictions, the hieroglyphics of the ancient Egyptians, they were farming, remember? They had agriculture. They were farming. They was plowing the ground and tilling the ground, meaning that the land was fertile. Why? Because of the pyramids. So what happens now when you go to Kemet now? It's sand. It's a desert. The Sahara is a desert. Why? Because somebody came along and destroyed those pyramids. This is just proof positive, people. I'm telling you, when you do the research, you can put this stuff together. This was the purpose of the pyramids, to do exactly what the trees were doing, to do exactly what was happening underground, having a consistent flow of negative ions that basically sustain people, but not just people, the vegetation, the trees. This was alive and well all over the world, especially in Kemet. This is why pyramids were all over the place, because all we're talking about here is energy. As I always keep telling you, it all goes back to energy. That's all we're talking about. We're talking about energy. So the pyramids amplified this energy and dispersed it. This is why Kemet and the Sahara Desert is a desert now. It didn't used to be. It was fertile because of the ionosphere, because of the negative ions that the pyramids was creating. Now, understand, most of you, depending on where you live at in the world, you see this process every day. If you have an air conditioner, you've seen this process happen. You just didn't understand what it was. Now, do you water your air conditioner? No, you don't. But you notice that your air conditioner is constantly dripping water. You try to pick that thing up, it's going to start leaking. Who the hell put water in the air conditioner? You start thinking about it. What happens is the air conditioner does exactly what the trees does. It's creating negative ions. It pulls in the moisture from the air, which is why you use the air conditioner when it's hot, when it's humid. There's moisture in the air. It uses that moisture and change it into negative ions to give you cold air. It's the process. That whole process I just talked about is happening within your air conditioner, and the energy from the negative ions is being used to basically change, well, along with help from the socket, electricity from the house or whatever, is using the whole process to give you cooler air. It's the same thing. You see the process every single day. And a lot of people don't realize it. So when you go back and look at the Egyptians we talk about today, the Egyptians we know of, Neterket and Zoser, Tutankhamun or whatever like that, the pyramid builders, understand, they knew what the pyramids were doing. They knew the power of the pyramids. So what started to happen? They could see that the land started to become, unfertile. They can see it started to change over to desert. Remember, you read the stories when you start reading about ancient Kemet, how people started to come into Kemet because the land was fertile. They tried to escape famine. Remember, the same thing started happening inside of Kemet. Famine started to happen because the crops wasn't growing. This is why they tried to rebuild the pyramids. They tried to recreate desperately the ionosphere, the negative ions, around Kemet, so that they can keep the land fertile and so they can, keep on growing. And I don't know if they succeeded. Now you have the step pyramid of Neterket, you have the bent pyramid of Sneferu, and you have all these other pyramids that collapsed and were, I guess, later turned into tombs, some of them, or maybe they had other purposes for them, but they desperately tried to recreate the pyramids so they can do exactly what I explained and pull these negative ions out. They tried to recreate the process. This is why they did it. They seen Kemet started to turn. And, during the decline of Kemet, before they was invaded by the Persians and everybody else who came in there, they may have figured it out, or they may have had a way, to sustain themselves. But this is why they started to rebuild the pyramids. Now, if it was people living underground thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, there's a chance that there are still people living underground today. Now, with some researchers who went to the Grand Canyon to basically try to find, the whole legend of the underground city. And they basically did an interview with one of the Hopi Indians there who was talking about a time where, the Hopis or the Indians had to basically go live underground to basically survive this cataclysmic event. Now, understand, he's talking about a cataclysmic event, that happened. When you look at the whole interview, I won't put the whole thing up there, but it happened thousands of years ago. And, the Indians are very good at passing down stories. And you have to basically try to equate this timeline into the same timeline as the ancient Egyptians probably living underground, as I talked about. But now the whole thing is there were so many underground caverns and tunnels and passageways found underneath the United States. You have a lot of national parks that have caves, like crystal caves, and you have the cave, Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, Mammoth Cave in Kentucky that has, hundreds of miles of underground tunnels and caverns and everything like that. If you take a look at it, it's amazing, what they have found under there. And you gotta realize something. This is the reason why we have so many national parks in America. Now, whenever they know that there could possibly be tunnels and caverns leading into, inner Earth, or what they say, into inner earth, into these underground cities, they always change it into a national park so they can control the exploration of these tunnels and these caverns. And Mammoth Cave is no different. They change it into a park and they try to create some rides and make some money off of it. But really, it's being done to control exploration because they don't want nobody doing any independent research under there that they cannot control. This is the same thing with the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon, to my surprise, is even more controlled than when I went there, years ago. Now, when you go there, first of all, you got to go through gates and you have to pay $30. If you're in the car, it's $30 to get in. To get to the one side of the Grand Canyon. Now, when you get there, it's basically so many reservations. Not so much reservations. You find stores and you find like lodges. It's campgrounds now on that one side when you go through the gate. Bunch of campgrounds, a bunch of lodges, and you see a bunch of kids there, a bunch of college kids, and a bunch of people out there camping. So the whole thing is, when you go up to the front, you pay to get in or whatever like that, and then you just follow the road, and you get to the parking lots and the visitor center and everything like that. And then, you basically supposed to be able to see the Grand Canyon right then and there, but it's obstructed by these trees and the visitor center and everything like that. But after you get through it, you'll see, bam, right in front of your face, the Grand Canyon. According to the legend, the entrance to these underground cities is so far, so deep into the canyon that nobody, can basically get there with enough supplies, enough water and food supplies to survive the trip. And the one way that was close enough is supposed to be blocked off. I took a trip there. Okay, so we know in 1907, supposedly, an archaeologist came down here who was doing some kind of exploring and found an entrance to what is said to be an underground, city, ancient Egyptian city. So we know they're supposed to have found Egyptian artifacts there, also Hindu and Buddhist artifacts as well.